Mihawk vs Shanks, one of the most heated debate in One Piece fandom, and today we are gonna talk about it and find out who is truly the strongest. And I know that no matter how good of an argument I gave from both sides, it will not going to change anything. But still, I will make sure that you understand that this debate is not even a debate in the first place. So Mihawk and Shanks, they are two most powerful individuals in the story. When they duel or fight, the news about these fights spread all over the world. Those duels considered legendary, even the legend Whitebeard himself said that. So before we find who is the strongest, the one fact should remain that these two are really strong. So let's dive into the most heated debate in One Piece. So first let's talk about Red Hair Shanks, because we know more about him than Mihawk. Red Hair Shanks, also the former member of Roger Pirates and also the son of Gorosei, or the former supreme commander of God's Knight Figarland Garling. He is also a Yonko of the sea, most likely became after defeating the shame of Elbaf Loki 6 years ago. Shanks, known for his tremendous haki and sword skill, implies in chapter 1058. Shanks also has shown great feats, for example clashing with Whitebeards and splitting the sky, also stopped a Kainu on Marineford War, and recently shut down Admiral Green Bull from his haki and also one-shot Kid. And he also have the ability to copy other characters' sword skills. For example, he copied Roger's divine departure when he was just 14 or I think 15. And in the film Red Data Book, it is implies that Shanks can shut down other people's observation haki, and for that he is called as the killer of observation haki. And about observation haki, Shanks have future sight. He can look into the future up to 10 seconds, and that's amazing because future sight users like Luffy and Katakuri can see briefly into the future, but Shanks is on a whole different level. On paper he should be without a doubt the top of the food chain. Then why Mihawk fans don't want to accept him as the strongest? So for that, first we need to know about his rival Dracule Mihawk. But there are not that many things because we still didn't see him fight seriously. He didn't even show us the glimpse of his haki at all. So we are gonna use the information we have in the story to actually figure out what truly Mihawk is capable of. So first, Mihawk is the world's strongest swordsman, but we don't know how he became that. But still, entire world acknowledge him. So he definitely have the power to back it up, and he is also one of the two people who turned their blade into black blade. And the first person we know who forged his blade into black blade was legendary sword god Ryuma. So this feat is not some random bullshit that anyone can replicate it. Mihawk was also a warlord without a crew and now basically a Yonko in Cross Guild, and his bounty represent his threat level. Even though bounty is not directly related to strength, but Mihawk's case is different. First of all, he is not the Yonko on paper. Buggy is actually a Yonko, but world government think that Mihawk individually is more dangerous than the Yonko himself. And don't forget, when his bounty was revealed, it was higher than the 3 of the 4 Yonkos. Only Shanks had the higher bounty than Mihawk, so he is a very dangerous individual, and nobody knows more than the Marines because Mihawk hunts the Marine. He is the only individual who go out of his way to hunt them, and Marines can deal with him, so they make him a warlord so he can stop the hunting. So basically they just make him their allies. Mihawk's lineage and his past is still a mystery, but we know one thing, that he was betrayed once, and there might be a possible connection between him and Imo because of their same eyes. But I don't want him to become a blood merchant. He should be a strong individual just like Whitebeard. He doesn't need to be a part of some great lineage to become the strongest. So now back to the topic. So both Shanks and Mihawk have solid background and portrayal. Shanks have feats, Mihawk have his title. So now let's delve into the arguments we get from both sides. So from Mihawk fans, only one argument, and it was pretty valid according to the story, that Mihawk is the world's strongest swordsman and Shanks is just a swordman, so Mihawk is stronger. And this argument is pretty straightforward, no headcanon, simple fact. But Shanks fan gave so many arguments, but mostly are just headcanon. So let's talk about the argument Shanks fan talk about the most. Let's talk about the first argument that started everything. Most people may not know about this, but it was a thing back in the days. And the argument was from Shanks fans that Mihawk is the warlord and Shanks is a Yonko, and there is a difference between a Yonko and a warlord. So basically they just want to say that Mihawk is nowhere close to Shanks because he is a Yonko. Those people who don't understand, let me explain. For a long time, it was a discussion that you need 7 warlords, 3 admirals and 1 fleet admiral to beat a Yonko because of the Marineford arc. But now we all accept that you don't need that much because 2 Yonko were defeated in Wano without any admiral, without the 7 warlords, and the title of the Yonko doesn't represent the strength of an individual but as a whole. For example, Whitebeard and his allies, Buggy and his connection and his past, Shanks and his crew plus his fleet, Luffy with his crew and his allied nations like fishmen. So the argument of Yonko and the Warlord doesn't matter anymore, because even if we see that you need to be a Yonko to fight, the Yonko doesn't exist for Mihawk because he have no interest to become a Yonko in the first place, and based on his strength and portrayal he is the real Yonko of Cross Guild. If any other Yonko attack Cross Guild, for example Shanks or Luffy, who do you think gonna fight them? Absolutely Mihawk. So this argument doesn't make any sense at all. The second argument that comes from Shanks fans was that Shanks is the end goal of Luffy and Mihawk is the end goal of Zoro. So Luffy is the main character and he will be stronger than Zoro at the end of the series. That means Shanks will be stronger than Mihawk. This argument will be great, but instead of Shanks versus Mihawk, if it was about Mihawk versus Roger. But why? Because Shanks is not Luffy's goal. Fans need to understand that the role of Shanks in Luffy's life is completely different than the Mihawk's role in Zoro's. Let me explain. Shanks is the role model for Luffy, someone Luffy wants to be acknowledged by. He is not the goal of Luffy. Luffy's true goal is Gold Roger, Pirate King. In Zoro's life, Kuina was the role model or Shanks-like figure. She was the one Zoro made the promise, while Mihawk is the goal of Zoro. And I believe that end of series Luffy will be stronger than end of series Zoro. This shouldn't be a debate, but saying Shanks is stronger than Mihawk for that reason is completely false. We need more than that. And now Luffy and Zoro's end goal characters that they need to surpass has changed. Luffy now need to surpass previous Joy Boy to defeat Imo, while Zoro need to surpass Ryuma to become the strongest swordsman ever. So both Mihawk and Roger are the goal of Luffy and Zoro, while Ryuma and Joy Boy are the final goal for them to become the strongest. So this argument also doesn't make any sense. So now let's move on to the next argument, which comes from Shanks fans, is that Shanks is not a pure swordsman. And this is one of the dumbest argument. Why? Listen, Shanks, who always uses his sword even when he was on Roger's ship. His duel with Mihawk considered legendary. Every time he faces an opponent, he brings out his sword. For example, against Akainu, against Whitebeard. And when he challenged Marines, he bring out his sword. And there is one more thing that's said about him and Roger, that when their crew's in danger, they become demons. And when Kid threatened or almost wipe out Shanks' fleet in the future, he saw Shanks pull out his sword to protect his fleet and one-shot Kid. So when Shanks is really serious, he pulled out his sword. And another argument that is directly connected to this pure swordsman bullshit is that Shanks is the Haki man. Like, what the fuck is Haki man? Let's say Haki man is the person who uses Haki. By that means every top tier character is the Haki man. And about pure swordsman, New Zero, who is an immortal and have so many abilities besides Haki and sword, is still considered a swordsman. King, a Lunarian and a devil fruit user, considered a swordsman. Even fucking Shiryu, who have invisible devil fruit, considered a swordsman. But somehow Shanks with only one arm is not a swordsman. Like, what the fuck? A man with only one arm and one sword is not a swordsman, but somehow a fucking 200 years old immortal with 10 different abilities is a swordsman. Like, what the fuck is this comparison? Listen, if Shanks had a devil fruit, then I have no problem considering him being stronger than Mihawk, but Shanks doesn't have the devil fruit, so we shouldn't have to say that bullshit that he is not the pure swordsman or Haki man. And he didn't shown Haki Kamehameha yet. Some people will talk about Joy Boy Haki incident, that Joy Boy Haki release undo the summoning of other Goruses, and that Haki was compared to Shanks Haki by Dory and Brogy. And it is definitely a great feat, but there is a problem, or you can say that this Haki comparison is already done before. Remember when Shanks used his Wi-Fi Haki to suppress Green Bull? At that point of time, Jinbe commented that Shanks Haki is monstrous or massive depending on the translation. And when Jinbe saw Mars, he also said that same thing, that Mars Haki is monstrous. So we can also say that Shanks Haki can be equal to Goruse's according to Jinbe, and according to Dory and Brogy, it was comparable to Joy Boy's Haki. So it depends on you. Who do you think is correct? Jimbe, a seventh warlord of the sea who was also the part of 3 Yonko's crew, or Dory or Brogy, the legendary giants who was defeated by a legendary Mr. 3. But that Haki release have no importance in debate because we have already seen that when Shanks is angry he bring out his sword, and that Haki release of Joy Boy was simple Haki release. It will do nothing against character like Mihawk, Roger, Rayleigh, Garp because these characters are pure Haki master. They don't rely on devil fruit. And one more thing that Shanks fans say, that Roger and Shanks don't follow the swordsman code. They say that they don't live by the way of the sword like Mihawk, Odin or Zoro. They just use sword to channel their Haki. But what is the way of the sword? Some people say that you just devoted yourself to only use sword. You have to love your sword. And this is all fan made, by the way. This way of the sword was created by Shanks fans, so we don't need to agree with them. However, let's use this logic. So Goldie Roger, who was without a doubt one of the most powerful character in the story, is also a pure swordsman because of the way of the sword. Roger uses a supreme great sword. The name of the sword was Ace. So Roger's sword's name was Ace and his son name was also Ace. So what that implies? It simply means that Roger loved his sword so much that he named his son after it. So Roger's love his sword by the way of the sword. He is pure swordsman. But Shanks fans implies that he is not. So which Shanks fan we should believe? The one who created this way of the sword, or the one who created it but forget that when it comes to Roger? And one of the most interesting thing is that if we use this way of the sword to judge the characters if he is a swordsman or not, then Zoro will not be considered the swordsman at all. We saw recently he kicked Loki. That means he is not a swordsman anymore by that logic. And I'm sure that instead of Zoro, if it was Shanks who kicked Loki, then the entire Shanks fans will be using that kick to prove that he is not a swordsman. So again, this pure swordsman and Haki man argument is just pure bullshit that was created by Shanks fans based on nothing. So now let's move on to the next argument that Shanks fans give, and that is that Shanks have feats better than Mihawk. And this is generally a good argument. If you are a Shanks fans and arguing to any Mihawk fan, just say this, that Shanks have better feats, that's why he is stronger, until Mihawk shows better feats than Shanks. Simple, and that's more genuine arguments. You don't have to create some bullshit like pure swordsman or Haki man. After all, Shanks is a swordsman and you can't deny that. And if he have something like Kamehameha, then we just need to wait for him to use it. But I know there are only few Shanks fans who will agree with this argument. Anyway, let's move. So the fact is that Mihawk is the world's strongest swordsman, and as long as Shanks is a swordsman, he is weaker than Mihawk. It's very simple. And another thing, even if by chance Shanks use Haki Kamehameha, then still he will be equal to Mihawk, not stronger than him, because Mihawk is stronger because he is the world's strongest swordsman. He is already one level above Shanks, and if Shanks gets some extra ability beside his sword skills, then he will be equal to Mihawk. And there are people who say that title doesn't mean anything, and anyone who think that title are meaningless, then I just have to say one thing to you: please stop reading the story. Imagine how much of an idiot you should be that you have to deny the very thing that started the story. I'm talking about the title Pirate King. Just like strongest swordsman, Pirate King is also a title that Luffy is after. Just like Zoro need to defeat Mihawk to gain the title of the world's strongest swordsman, Luffy also need to conquer the Grand Line to become the Pirate King. And there are many titles, for example the world's strongest man, world's strongest creature, and the hero of the Marines. By Shanks fans logic, these titles are meaningless. So title does matter in the story. So now let's move on to the topic. So well, this is all the arguments we get from Shanks fans, and we can agree that every single argument Shanks fans provide are just headcanon. Not a single argument have a solid chance to put him above Mihawk. While Mihawk argument is pretty simple and straight from the story, so we just have to admit it that Shanks fans don't read the story as the story written, and their arguments are baseless bullshit. Listen, you can say Shanks is stronger than Mihawk, that's your opinion, but if you are debating or fighting someone in comment section of YouTube video or on Twitter, you need to provide the facts to prove your point. You can't just say that Shanks is stronger than Mihawk because you hate Zoro or something like that. And I have to say one thing to Shanks fangirls, not the fans but the devoted fangirls. If you read One Piece, remember one thing, that the most important character in the story after Luffy is Zoro, and Zoro is Oda's favorite straw hat, and his dream matters the most after Luffy. And one more thing is that Oda is holding Mihawk doesn't mean he's weak. It simply means that Oda doesn't want to reveal too much about Mihawk, and when he do, I'm sure Mihawk will not disappoint. And listen, if Oda come out and say that Mihawk is weaker than Shanks, then I will gladly accept that it's not a big deal. But right now the fact is Mihawk is the world's strongest swordsman and Shanks is just a swordsman. So Oda is clear that who is stronger. So just accept it for now. So if you like the video then share it and subscribe the channel for more One Piece content.